Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Hard Claim with Viva La Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play Blood on the Clocktower and get their player perspective of the game. Joining us for this week's episode is Dee. Thank you for
Hi.
joining.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
we have a very spicy Teensyville script here.
Yeah.
This is called Small Town Elementary School. As you can see, it has Legion and only Legion, but also an atheist. No outsiders. Very spicy. So yeah, so during night one, I would wake you up and show you the noble token.
Ooh.
This question maybe doesn't work quite as well as what we normally do, but normally what I ask people is if you and I were chatting on day one, what would you claim?
All right. Um, well, I'm trying to remember the little strategies that came up during like this script making process specifically, because a lot of the feedback I've gotten is that it's a game for sure. It does not feel like Clock Tower. Um, the way that this is usually run is that it's either atheist and all the characters are good, or there are specifically four Legion, two good players, and um, the noble learns three characters, one of which is evil, but so I would learn myself, the other good player, and a Legion, and if it was a Legion game and not an atheist game. So I would try to go talk to the other two people that I learned. And I think I would just open claim to them. I don't think there's much reason as a blue token to hide who you are here. I'd claim Noble.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very. I'm trying to. I'll be honest. I usually throw tokens in the back for these to make for interesting claims. Even though Pixie is maybe a weird one, considering usually there's only going to be one, maybe two things that somebody would claim.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah,
I'm Pixie.
yeah,
I'm not
you're the Pixie,
actually the
not the
noble.
actual noble.
I got too much into my madness. I
You
know
get
that
the
there is
mindset.
a
Yeah.
noble. I got the mindset. I really love getting really into the mindset of madness. I When I was newer, which is also the same time frame when I made the script, I would um get really really giddy when I got Sarah mad, or Sarah Novus mad, and I'd be like, yes, I am this character, I am this character, and I'd overact it so much that I would get executed for breaking minutes. But it was, and they kind of pissed other people off, but it was so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, madness is something we do like to talk about, and so I'm sure we'll talk about more in that in a bit later. Um, yeah, I'm still just trying to think of how spicy this script is.
What? Oh god. Yeah, I think because it is so binary, like there is either Legion or there is atheist, it kind of, the question of the game is very simple,
Hmm.
and it kind of blurs over um a lot of the complexity that these two characters can have, and it it's kind of like, it's not the atheist or Legion experience at all. It's a very it's not the atheist or Legion experience at all. It's something else entirely, and that something else is something that I have been comfortable teaching to new players before. I always disclaim it like, this is not a normal Clock Tower game. This is a crazy script. If you want something that's actually kind of like Clock Tower, try any other script, probably base 3 though. Probably TB first.
Any other one?
Any other script.
Yeah. All right. Well, how did you discover Blood on the Clock Tower, and about how long ago was that?
um so I spent all of October 2022, just binge watching what there was back then of NRB, Blood on the Clocktower, and then I then started going from there into watching some of the TPI VODs, and then I saw somebody post a link in the on-screen Twitch chat of the VOD, and then I paused it. I typed in that Discord link to the unofficial. It was like a regular invite link. I had no idea that there was discord.gg/BOTC. And then I joined and I was super duper hyper fixated. I just started playing lots and getting really involved in the community. And I kind of wish that I could have that really intense obsession with it back, even though I still do really love the game. Um, there's just something really special to uh, having it be all you want to think about and stuff.
That kind of like phase of discovery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember what your first game or like several games were like?
Oh God. Um. So my first ever game was a homebrew. Um. It
Classic.
was. it, so if you know the homebrew creator, A Lonely Taco, um, he had this custom fabled called Realm Jumper, where you would start in one script and then and then sometime midway through the game, the uh, the demon would choose a different script, and everyone's characters would be changed into kind of their equivalent in that new script. So I we started with S&V. I do not remember what the custom script we jumped into was, but I was the juggler. I did not know how to juggle. I and then I and then after we jumped, I was the philosopher, and I turned into the alchemist because I had read the wiki um and thought that alchemist was really cool. And then I got the poisoner, and I thought that was really, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to use this power for good. So I'm just gonna like tell everyone, hey, I'm the philosopher, alchemist, poisoner. Uh, I'm just gonna poison a dead person every night. Um, Other people would have probably chosen to choose poison random people each night and see if they poison the demon. Um, and made it very obvious that they picked someone who was the demon. But that was my literal very first game of Blood on the Clock Tower.
That is a wild
So I
start.
didn't, yeah. And then I kind of played more base 3 and started learning how to do it. Um, and started storytelling through the storyteller queue that the unofficial has.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Yeah. And so what hooked you about the game that you kind of kept coming back to it, kept playing over and over, hyper fixating on it, as many of us have
Oh yeah.
done?
Oh yeah. So Clock Tower is the first social deduction game that I've gotten super into, like into the community, but I've always really gravitated towards social deduction and trying to find a place to play it, like um always wanting to play just push the button whenever there was a chance to do Jackbox. I did not like any of the other ones, but Jackbox was a game that appealed to a lot of people who wanted to like play together casually, and also a little bit of Among Us. Um, I like the idea of framing lying as a thing that you can do for. I like the idea of framing lying as a thing that you can create constraints around that are agreed on, and then you can just play around with that in a fictionalized way
Hmm.
without actually hurting people's feelings or actually damaging your relationships, because whatever happens in the game stays in the game because it is a fictional town. There's not actual murder going on.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
we always joke about, oh, we'll meet on Friday night and lie to each other, as friends do, you know.
Lie to your friends for fun.
Yeah, and then kill them.
Yeah. Being able to play
Yeah.
around with those ideas just really brings you closer with the people you're doing it with, and it's a way to play around with some of the feelings that you have and work through stuff. It's not actual therapy, but it is just a really he it can either be a really healing thing to play or a really anxiety inducing way to play a thing to play.
Yeah.
Um yeah.
And it's a bit like a story generator, right? Because your
Yeah.
best games you're sitting around for. I mean, I ran a game, this last Friday, and I kept, for the second or third game, I kept listening to everybody's conversations as a storyteller, and all they were talking about was the previous game.
Gosh.
So,
Yeah.
have you had a chance to play in person?
Yes. For the past 2 years, during the school terms, I ran a club where we played Clocktower in person. A lot of TB, some SMV and BMR, um, and some really. I don't think we ever played the Teen C that I submitted to you, but we it was a lot of like-minded people who wanted to just try out really crazy ideas, and one of the club members made a homebrew based on the TV show Infinity Train that has one of the my most favorite homebrew characters of all time anywhere. And
What's that character like?
oh yeah, this would be a controversial thing to say it's my favorite character of all time. And I also don't remember what Infinity Train character it was based on, but the ability was like, um, if you did not speak at all yesterday, you get to ask a yes or no question.
Hmm.
So just like every other day, if you didn't talk at all the day before, you get an artist question, and it can repeat over and over if the game goes long enough and you stay alive long enough. And just that first day of sitting there, like, I just really, really loved it, and it would be also be a very fun thing to bluff. But I was just really happy that I drew that character.
That's fun.
Yeah, I like it kind of in the same way I like Madness because it's a really fun idea to play around. I feel like some fans of Madness would not like this because you can you have a lot more freedom of what you're saying with your madness, but I like the constraints, and I like, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I really wish I knew about Clock Tower, or that Clock Tower was a thing when I was going to college, because that would have been
Yeah.
like just a huge opportunity. Right now, I only get to run the game about once a month in person, um, and
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to do it more than that, especially if you're working full time and doing whatever people do.
Yeah, I just graduated college um like a little bit more than a week ago, so I am definitely
Congratulations.
trying to
Yeah.
yeah, I'm definitely trying to look for like local clock tower, but what I would define as local around here is like an hour drive away. Um, because I'm like equally inconveniently far away from a bunch of major city centers.
Yeah, I mean, even for my quote unquote local group. It's about 35 to 40 minutes, and I'm debating starting more regularly, going more about an hour, hour and a half away to go play in
Yeah,
somewhere other. Instead of local, I kind of think of them as regional, games and get-togethers. But
yeah, definitely.
I know the people from the Grimoire play a lot in the Cincinnati kind of area. It's be definitely a day trip, but it's a drivable distance at least. But it's
Yeah.
it's hard to get at that motivation to go on a weekend when that would be like your entire Saturday.
Yeah, I would do these day trips more often. I will when I get my driver's license because it's even harder to convince someone else to make that their entire Saturday.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So for you, what are the differences like between playing online versus playing in person?
I really like in person because, well, at first I was really kind of scared because I didn't have that ability to have to like take good notes and stuff. Um, because my first ever in person game was Spy in a 16-player Trouble Brewing.
Oh wow.
Um, so I tried to write down the entire grimoire on my notes app, and I might still have that, and it was so silly looking. And then I just gave up on taking notes during in-person games because it's definitely a much faster uh, kind of thing, and it's
Mhm.
also harder to process information during the night because I have to have my eyes closed, like physically closed. So it's definitely a format that relies less on knowing what you're doing as a player, and something that really shines is the social reads.
Mhm.
And I have more of an idea of like, I think this person's good because they're genuinely trying to figure out what's going on. Um, and so it's just like more about social interaction and like online, it's more about the game mechanics. I like both. There's a time for each, I think.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I love the how much the physical space matters in person.
yeah.
I got to play in person a couple days ago, and I had to leave, so I was a traveler, travel brain. I'm the bureaucrat. I'm evil. My demon's right next to me. So I noticed a player across from me is talking to another player, and he's pointing somewhere around the script, which I can look and realize it's probably means based on where he's pointing, he's either the Raven Keeper or the Virgin. So,
Mm.
um, and she was doubting whatever he was claiming to her privately. Like she was very audibly, publicly, like she's like, "I want to kill you." Like not now, but I want to kill you. So, my hope was that he was a virgin, so I nominated him, hoping to use up the virgin ability. Um, he was not the virgin, but by the way, he's very clearly acting. Basically, got him to out that he was a Raven Keeper. He didn't say that, but he was like, "Oh, it helps if I die, but not this way."
Oh,
So, but
oh yeah, that is very obvious.
yeah, and he was new, so it was like his second game. So,
Yeah.
but either way, just him pointing at the script like that and me kind of catching that as an evil traveler, that can't really happen online. Um, so I love that physical space and what it means. I've been a good player and caught out minions because they're huddling next to each other, pointing at the bottom of the script.
Oh yeah. I played in person in very wide open spaces, like in my college club, and I played in very tight quarters, like in a group that plays at a board game cafe. And I think I slightly prefer the just a little bit more flexibility around having a wider open space. Mainly because I was playing BMR last time I was at that board game cafe, and I was a demon, and there was physically no way for me and a minion to get far enough away to actually have conversations about us being evil, and I was very not used to that. And I really like the lunatic character. I like to convince myself that I'm the lunatic character when it's on the script, because I don't want to be the demon. So I convinced myself that I was the lunatic character and nominated myself, and that was that game over. And then I learned, and then my minions were like, "We tried to tell you." Um, we
Yeah.
tried to like hint at you, but you just weren't getting it.
Yeah, and kind of to some extent, and I know not everybody feels the same, but it's kind of a feature of the game and not a bug because it's really how it's designed to work. It's designed to be kind of harder to pass along information. Good example, like if you were the lunatic, that's a good example of how the lunatic, shines in person versus online. Um, sitting next to my demon in person, I got his claim from him while I was sitting next to him, but also I kind of just casually pointed at the demon, the imp thing on the sheet, and he's like, hmm. He just kind of nodded, and he kind of sort of wait. The storyteller messed up a little bit, and I knew that the minion was on the other side of the demon, but I tried to kind of ignore that. But even that aside, he was kind of able to kind of just turn his sheet just a little bit that way and kind of point at the guy next to him
Yeah.
to let me know that he's a minion. And again, that's kind of the things I like. The game does want everybody to stay within the circle. I do think probably ultimately the sweet spot is in and around the circle, but I prefer if people can't go off far away from the circle. It's my own preference anyway. It gives a little bit of
Yeah.
space, but people aren't like literally on top of each other the whole time.
Yeah, I felt like we were on top of each other in that setting. And I like if we even if we have to like whisper, like getting a little bit of a whisper in.
Yeah,
Um
and that's why online we
Whisper and
call it
gesture.
whispers, right? Because you
Yeah.
in person you would literally have to whisper to tell anybody anything without being overheard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you sit down for a game, you're about to draw a token. Do you prefer your tokens blue or red?
Definitely blue. I like the red aesthetic. Um but I don't know when I'm sitting down to a game if being a red token would be scary for me or not. That's why I've kind of sort of drifted towards storytelling. Being in person helps a lot with the red token anxiety because when I'm playing online, I'm usually playing with people who literally are playing all day, every day, and really are really good at the game. And you can't get anything past them, it seems. Um, Especially with the high amount of recall. Mm.
Yeah,
So I think in a more casual setting where the stakes are lower, I'm more okay being either color. But in like, if there's like really a lot of skill going around, a lot of analysis, I want to be able to get in on that analysis instead of feeling like there's a lot of people against me. That's also why I like traveling, playing traveler characters, because when I'm evil, I can just I I don't have to I don't have to worry I'm going to be the demon. And if I
right.
do get evil, I can focus on supporting the evil team instead of having to defend myself.
Yeah, I love travelers, and I've talked about it on here a lot. You've probably seen me on Discord talking
Oh
about
yeah.
how I like to use travelers. just kind of like what you said. I was a traveler, and in person. Um, Game lasted 2 days before our demon got executed and we lost, but it was still fun. But
Yeah.
my role as a traveler is I could try to see. Oh well, I can try to either use up a virgin ability or out them as Raven Keeper so that my demon can act accordingly. Um, as they always call it, maximum power, minimal responsibility.
Yeah. And on the accessibility page on the Blood on the Clocktower website, um, TPI frames travelers as they can be an accessibility tool.
Mhm.
Like if you have someone who's like really scared about the idea of having to defend themselves, or if you someone doesn't know if they'll have to like bail out for any reason, which can be an accessibility need, or like a time constraint, which is also an accessibility need. Travelers are great to give you that flexibility as a storyteller who wants to include someone who might otherwise just not play at all.
Yeah, and I've talked about this also often, but I have players somewhat regularly who are just they'll join a session and they're like, you know what, I want to play, but also I'm just like really tired. I had a long day. It was
True.
stressful. I don't know if I have it in me to be potentially a demon. Can I travel? My answer is always absolutely, and
Yeah.
I never think
Not
twice
I
about it.
love when storytellers are able to say yes to that. That's not always something that all storytellers are open to.
Or players
And
for that matter.
yeah, or players. There are some lobbies, communities that just don't like how swingy the abilities of travelers can be. Um, I especially if they care a lot about the balance of the game mechanically. Um, yeah. Also, I think one of the last times I was able to play on your stream, I had to travel
Oh yeah,
because there was like a wind storm and it might have knocked out my power, it might not,
right, yeah,
and I didn't want to get into a game and just suddenly unreachable and then you'd have a problem. My power didn't get knocked out then, but it was really fun the way
yeah.
that you ran the travelers, and yeah, I really liked it.
If I remember correctly, you were an
That
apprentice poppy grower.
Oh, yes,
It's something
and
I've
I
done a
got
few different times on stream because I think it's a lot
yeah,
of fun.
I think this was before you rebranded to Hard Claim.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love the energy of your streams. I am just
Thank you.
not a night owl at all, and because you're more west in the US than me, it's later in the day for me than it is for you.
I am East Coast for whatever it's worth.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Wait.
So we're going till 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m. my time.
Wait,
We start at
did
9.
you move?
No, no,
I thought you were like say I thought you were PST at some point.
nope.
Weird. Okay.
we're,
I
we're,
thought
we're,
it was a
we're, ju- we're
time
just
zone
night
thing.
owls.
No, okay. Yeah. Because I'm because there's a lot of clock tower people who are night owls and I'm not. That's caused me to get to know people who are from not the US and play with them, and that's been really fun.
Yeah. Yeah, our group just we originally had like different storytellers, and they would often run on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and um, kind of the main storyteller had stepped away, so I just kind of slid into that Friday slot. 9 o'clock just happened to be the time that
Yeah.
started, and it worked for me. And I did experiment with trying to run games at 8, but some people was able to make it where they couldn't before, but others couldn't. So I ended up just sticking with 9, and then I started streaming,
Mhm.
and yeah. So and
Yeah.
yeah. So I like to ask about characters you like to play or maybe avoid. And maybe a good one to start with is because I think we, if I remember correctly, we share the same character. Our favorite character, which is Ogre.
Oh yay!
So, so,
Yeah.
so I wanted to see if that was still your favorite character, and if so, why?
I have never gotten to play as the ogre, but I still really love the ogre and the gnome, uh, which has since come out since I said that on Discord,
Mhm.
as concepts because you just like have one person that you really that you can be ride or die with, and then you have that support, and you never feel like you're alone. Ogre in particular, I think I like that more than gnome, because I like the fantastical conditions that can be put upon you in Clocktower, like madness, like other limitations, and that marionette, like not knowing who you are, is a not knowing what your alignment is and not knowing what you're playing for is just something that not as the ogre specifically, but as other characters that maybe don't have their alignment confirmed to them, like Marionette and like some homebrew characters. I just really like the way that can mess with your mind and stuff.
And like any good Clock Tower character, there's no one way to play it. Um,
Yeah.
I think we saw early on with Ogre, a lot of people would just kind of publicly out as Ogre and publicly out who they picked. And then that kind of created a little bit of problem when the person they picked was kind of sort of confirmed as evil. So therefore, you must be evil. So not
Yeah.
not that, not that that's the worst thing in the world, but it can potentially limit your strategies when instead you could just kind
Yeah.
of keep it on the down low.
If you're outed as evil or you're in a situation where people are just set on the idea that you are evil, um that's a really tough situation to navigate because in some groups and in some ways that you could approach the game, not only does it limit your strategies, it also limits like the way you can connect with people in the game. Like especially if your outing leads to people not wanting to talk to you or people being suspicious of the people who talk to you. That sucks.
Yeah, we yeah we we,
I
we, we try to avoid that in circles that I run in.
yeah. Um I've online I've just like played in all the circles. Not literally all of them, but a lot of different kinds of circles and a lot of
Right.
different mediums. Um and so I've been exposed to a lot of different metas. And some people don't like to be told like, "Hey, you should do you should do this thing that you don't want to do in the game or else like with the reason that you should do it or else you're not being a good sport." So I think the best setups are like where you can convince people that it's a good strategy to it's a good strategy to talk to people you think are evil, which it
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
is. And it's also just a lot of fun.
Yeah. And we ran Whale Buffet for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and we had a player. It tells you a lot about his style of playing. He was a minion. He chose to be the vizier. So that's the kind of group we run in, where it's like being out at evil is not something I'll get you ignored. And he had a lot of fun with it. Well, he had a lot of fun with it until he figured out that another player chose to be the preacher.
Oh god.
He still had fun with it, but it's just very unfortunate that you choose to be this outed minion only for there to be a preacher.
Preacher is a very powerful character if you can choose any character to be. I think I've played that kind of game where you're given a character type and you get to choose what character.
Yeah.
Um, but I have net since it was called Whale Buffet. I've never had the chance to play it because I've been kind of on a little break while I was finishing school, and I'm trying to get back into the community and to be back active.
Yeah, it's definitely an older concept. I know somebody else, Hella, would kind of run like a choose your own character kind of games pretty often. Normally, I just prefer to stick with good old classic Clocktower, but on a rare occasion, I like to run some homebrew adjacent stuff.
Yeah.
Are there any other characters that you kind of like or don't like? Do you prefer maybe
Mm.
like information characters or powerful characters, or again anything you like prefer
Mm.
to avoid, etc.?
I I completely avoid scripts with the damsel
Ooh,
because just the idea of possibly being the damsel makes me too scared to take the seat. Um, and I, um, if I don't know the group very well, I will also avoid scripts with the goblin because I've just had some unfortunate experiences with the outed evil portion of the goblin.
right.
Like
Basically,
that
kind of
is
what we
something.
talked about before. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um I really like the scripts that I'm really comfortable both playing and storytelling are Trouble Brewing and Bad Moon Rising. And I I kind of have to trust a group and know them pretty well to be comfortable with going beyond that.
Yeah, the group can definitely make a big difference for a variety of reasons. So you are a moderator on both the unofficial Discord and the official Patreon Discord. So think about it as a player perspective. Um, what kind of things do you think a player should look for when they're in a game of Clock Tower, public or otherwise? Like,
Yeah.
I guess question is how do you be a responsible player?
Each community has its own rules that you should look out for. Um, but one rule that comes with the game, and I think as long as you stick to it, you'll be fine, is kill with grace and die with dignity. Um, because because a this is an environment where you are joining some other people to play a game and hopefully enjoy your time with those other people while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so there is that aspect of you should treat people with respect, but there's also, because it is this game, uh there is like the magic circle, where once you step in and you are in thinking about the game, it should be okay to uh once you've stepped in and you're thinking in terms of the game, it should be okay for you to lie to people, be lied to, accuse other people of being suspicious and being accused.
Mhm.
And um, I think some people make it so that they cannot be accused by reacting so emotionally to it that you're worried that you are hurting them outside the game by doing an action that is in the game, like accusing them, like pushing for their in game execution. And there are a variety of ways to just create that environment where everyone could be the demon and you're just trying to figure that out together.
Yeah. Yeah, the game really does rely on that rule play nice.
Yeah.
And which is the same rule where it says, kill with grace, die with dignity, which is such a great phrase. um,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, everybody's here just to have fun, right? So not only do you want to have fun, you want to make sure everybody else is having fun, because what goes around
Yeah.
comes around.
You want to make sure everyone can play the game.
Yeah, that's why it's important to talk to Out at Evil or
Yeah.
players you think is evil. Both really. I have also been a moderator on the unofficial. I am aware of what the workload is like to manage that. Um, if nothing else, be kind to your moderators. It is,
Please.
it is, it, yeah. I mean, if you're a problem player, it's not fun for anybody. Other people have to do work to try to sort it out. It's a mess.
Yeah. There has been so many amazing people that I've met through getting involved in the community primarily by moderating. I think I spend more time on moderating than I do on playing. I definitely right now, I'm trying to tip that balance a little bit more or towards playing and storytelling, but it's a slow process.
Mhm.
And there's been a lot of amazing people, and there's also been a lot of situations that I definitely can't go into at all that are just like, oh no, in ways that you can never imagine. Like, try to imagine that you cannot.
Yeah, I know. I definitely have a few war stories that I think you and I have shared together, and I
Yeah.
can only imagine how many you've dealt with since then.
Yeah. We're not going into those on youtube.com.
Right, right. Well, let's go into something a little bit lighter. Do you have a favorite player count?
A favorite player count? Uh, mm, there's a lot of ways to have a lot of fun within Teensyville, so I'd say 6.
Yeah, you talked briefly about like building this script and other people building scripts, and something I really like about Teensyville is that you can design it for a very specific set of interactions that
Oh, yeah.
if you put those together on a big script, normal full size script, you might sometimes see those, but nowhere near as often. Whereas, I mean, this script obviously is very hyper focused on
Oh, yeah.
basically two different interactions. Um, I'd say your average teen TV probably has a few more than that normally, but it's still a very small
Yeah.
number, and it's just fun to kind of mix and match in that hyper focused way.
Yeah. I don't know how recently they added a change to have the standard Teensyville format have 2 demons instead of 1, but I have not been, like, around in the Teensyville script building kind of thing since then. So it
Hmm.
would be really interesting to just kind of get back into that now that there is, like, this acceptance of just having, like, a little bit wider of a scope of interactions, but still a really small, really focused way to get an idea across.
Yeah, and there's a little while I was running Teensyville games on the TPI stream, and kind of ended up stepping away from doing that. And now I'm kind of known as the person who's regularly running like 15 plus player games on on my own stream. But I do miss Teensyville's. I'd probably prefer a full size game over a Teensyville on average, but they are a fun change of pace. There's just like an inherent silliness to a Teensyville, just because they're usually so quick, and
Yeah.
you can explore more, and yeah, it's a fun player count. Six is a fun player count.
Yeah. And I think when I do start to commit to regularly running games for a streamed audience, I think I'm going to like switch between like one big game, a couple Teensyvilles kind of each week. Like kind of how you switch between customs and base 3. Um I think a full size custom is a bit beyond my familiarity and comfort level as a storyteller right now, but I really like the way that uh, it. that you can get exposed to a bunch of different gameplay ideas with Teensyville
Mhm.
in kind of a lower stake setting because you're spending less time on each game. Yeah. So I want to collect a lot of Teensyville scripts and try them out on
Yeah.
the people who have agreed to play with me.
Yeah, and I really think that there's there's so many people streaming Clocktower nowadays, and it's um, a lot of fun, but it can be hard to, I guess, make a way into it. But I don't know.
Mhm.
In my opinion, I think running Teensy Bills would be a good sort of, I don't know if niche is the right word, especially since Clocktower is already a niche of itself. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know. That'd be fun to see. I think.
Yeah. Cause like a lot of streams I see are running really advanced scripts
Hmm.
and I feel like there might be some pressure to try to do that. And I would need to get a lot more practice as a storyteller before I'm ready to do that. And I it would also just be trying to fit myself into a box that I'm just not as a storyteller.
Yeah.
And also, Clock Tower is just one of the things that I'm doing. I'm also going to be doing music because that was what I studied in school, and um, that's what I want to continue doing. So I'm kind of doing this thing where, like, Wednesdays music, Thursdays Clock Tower.
Yeah. We talked about madness for a little bit earlier. It's something I like to expand on, especially if you think S&V has mutant and Serenovus, but beyond that, you also get Pixie is one of my favorite characters in the entire game. You got a Harpy. So yeah, how do you feel about madness in this game as a mechanic?
I think there's a lot of room to have so much fun with it. But that is very group dependent because sometimes people's opinions of how to play madness, how to administer madness as a storyteller are not compatible. But when um, you do have a group where your ideas of how to run and play madness are compatible and you see eye to eye in your reading of the rules, then it becomes a really nice tool to have a really fun, interesting game.
Yeah, fun mechanic. I always like to talk about how it's S&V is very info heavy, and madness is essentially a form of misinformation. But it's somewhat controlled by the good player. I don't know. It's really interesting, and not I can't really think of another game that has something similar to that.
Yeah. There's a lot of nuance to discussions of madness that I've definitely more read you participate in on discourse than actually participated in myself. Um,
For what it's worth, I've
because
probably talked about it more than I participated in myself as well. Yeah.
yeah.
So in this script, we obviously we talked about Atheist and Legion, and I'm curious about your thoughts on those characters more as a whole, maybe not necessarily in the context of this script,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, they're two very interesting characters. So how do you feel about? Let's start with Atheist. How do you feel about Atheist games?
Uh yeah, I've not gotten outside of this script, which cast in a very different role than it is in a full-sized game. Um, I've been exposed to a lot of ideas about the atheist character, and I played some atheist games and I've spectated some, but I've never had the courage to storytell it myself. Um, Even though I have read the atheist document a lot. I'm more of a careful player and storyteller in that regard where I take so long to
Mhm.
feel comfortable in in certain mechanics that other people would jump right into. Um,
I definitely
Sometimes
prefer
to good
the
effect, sometimes not.
I definitely prefer the more cautious approach over the more rash approach because I'm sure just like you have I've heard so many stories of horror atheist stories of storytellers doing crazy things that
Mm.
end up not being fun for anybody and yeah.
Yeah, there is some like content creator storytellers who run atheist games that are iconic and have been iconic for years. And I think my piece of advice for storytellers is don't try to copy someone else.
Absolutely.
Um, I once had someone try to play for play copy a that a like a TPI game from years ago where the storyteller went to the atheist and said, "Hey, you can get a super special mega win if you pretend to be the mayor the entire game." And this person who was trying to copy that game, uh, I drew the atheist token. This storyteller came to me like, "Hey, you get the super ultra mega win if you bluff mayor the entire game." And this other game was very recent in my memory, and I was like, "Hey, I get what you're trying to reference. I like that game, but I think for me as a player of this Discord game that is not being used for content, I'd rather be open about being the atheist. I think that will get me more towards being able to fulfill my win condition, and they were not happy about that.
That's
Um,
sad.
uh, so that's just like an extreme example of someone trying so hard to copy a game that they loved that they weren't tuned in to what their players wanted.
Yeah.
Not everyone is that rigid. Um, but I think if you want to run something really crazy, be have it represent you as a storyteller, have it be your original ideas, and also let it exercise your skill of running a great game for your group.
Yeah, Atheist is really like a litmus test for storytellers who, because as storytelling, it's really important that you're running games that are fun for your players and not for yourself. I mean, it should be fun for yourself, obviously,
Right.
but it should be fun for yourself because your players are having fun. And Atheist is like the ultimate litmus test for how how you're running a game. If you're running it for yourself or you're running it for your players. Um, Something to shout out is that Emma is working on her own kind of like atheist document, kind of like how she did one for High Priestess. If anybody's read that, and
Oh, nice.
maybe she'll be done with the atheist one by the time this airs. I know she has a kind of like a rough draft version on the Grim Scenarios server, but uh, I I'd be curious for people to read that and see what they think. There's a lot of people, Emma including, who really wants atheists to be ran because people just see atheists as like a playground a lot of times to do whatever, and it can be fun to do that. But really, a lot of people are starting to recommend and have been for a while, to be honest, that you run atheists like a normal game and let people figure it out. That just don't hand it to them that it's an atheist game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, just something to consider. That's really more of a storyteller advice, but her document focuses on playing atheist as a player, and the
Oh,
strategy
nice.
behind that. But it also assumes that games are being ran in such a way where an atheist could plausibly be bluffed by an evil player, and not just a game where the storyteller's just like, yeah, here's a silly game that's obviously an atheist.
Oh, yeah. Um, that I really loved Emma's High Priestess document, so I'm really interested in seeing this new document when it comes out. And that also reminded me of something that I see with both Atheist and the Mechanic of Madness, where if you're perhaps trying to teach less experienced storytellers, or you are storytelling yourself for a player group that you don't know really well, um, it makes a lot of sense to go for a more straightforward approach
Hmm.
and in how you run something or play something or recommend to others. And I see that a lot because I call places with really public lobbies my home, like the Patreon server and the unofficial. So there's a lot of ideas that I'm really interested in, like parts. There's a lot of ideas that I'm really interested in as like a concept that I would not recommend in a public lobby or in a group that I don't really know that well.
Hmm.
Like like the more fantastical role play parts that I see in both the atheist character and in the madness mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to know your audience, or if you don't know
Yeah.
your audience, you got to act accordingly.
Yeah.
So real quick, since we also had mentioned it, how about Legion? How do you feel about Legion as a character?
Legion. Oh my goodness. Uh it's so much more fun to be good in a Legion game than to be the Legion. It's I've had some Legion games where it's been like an uphill battle, but it's been really fun being in that uphill battle, and I those are really memorable. But in some game situations that you can get yourself into, it's just kind of demoralizing where the good players just have hard solved the entire game. They've found the people that they need to trust and they've gone straight ahead on trusting them. And then there's just nothing else you can do as counterplay. This gets back to my earlier point of a fun game is where everyone's making sure that everyone else can play. The good players in a Legion game are not being poor sports. They're not breaking any rules by hard solving the game. It's just unfortunate that it creates a scenario where there might be a couple more days to play out, but there's just not really a game anymore.
Hmm.
So I have gotten into that situation where I've like asked the storyteller, "Hey, could we just call this? Can we just concede?"
Yeah, and I also think for a storyteller, I think I've never been in this situation, thankfully, but the storyteller could, in theory, maybe this is a better option, maybe it's not, but just use the Legion ability to kill off down to 3 players, and maybe hopefully you're left in a final 3 where there's a question of who the last Legion is, but
If you
and
catch it early enough, then
yeah,
that could definitely be an option. But if you're in a I've been in situations before where even if you did kill down to final 3,
it would still
the
be
final day
solved.
still would not be interesting.
That's fair. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thankfully, I don't think I've been in that situation yet. I don't run a lot of Legion games, but for some reason, running Legion games have been pretty decent for me. In my group, I don't even get bluffs in a Legion game because my players play play so often together that the Legion usually connects and coordinates pretty well. I did have an interesting scenario where I was running a game on the TPI stream, and it was the charity auction stream where uh, the viewers can donate to add a new character, but the players won't know what character it is. So the game I ran, it was basically it was a secret Legion game. So that was an interesting
Oh.
challenge. So try to run a Legion game that's both fun without the few good players knowing that it's Legion. Um,
Oh.
yeah, I think it worked out
Um,
okay. The evil did win. It was kind of rough, but you know, such as it is.
yeah.
Uh, I do like to mention also real quick that Legion. I'd always heard that Legion was okay and online and even but great in person. And it was kind of interesting. I did finally get to play a Legion game at Final 3 Con in person. I, I was walking around the pickup space and saw a group that was or a game that was trying to form like the script saw Legion on it. I was like, maybe now's my chance to play in a Legion game in person, and it worked.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, going to Final 3 Con is just something that's not been in the cards for me these past years that it's existed. Primarily because it is right in the middle of spring semester, but I
Oh yeah,
it
yeah.
also might be an uphill battle for me now that I've graduated for financial reasons,
Oh yeah, yeah.
um, because you've gotta travel. But yeah, in any pretty much any other situation where you're playing Clocktower in person, there is not really it's really hard to get to a point where your group's experienced enough that you can introduce a Legion script. So
Yeah.
I it's so very few people get to have that experience of playing Legion in person.
Yeah, my in person group on a rare occasion gets to move beyond trouble brewing, but usually it's trouble brewing, which is great.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they love it
It's
and
great.
it's fun, and we're often getting new people in. So we do sometimes get to run S&V or BMR, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up here. Before we go, I do like to have people look at the script that we have up here and look at these characters, and then I ask, which of these characters would you like to be in real life?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to look at the script. It's been a while. Noble, Pixie, Empath, Night Watchman, Artist, Pacifist, Atheist, Legion. All of the good characters were chosen both for their ability to fit in this kind of script and because I relate to them in some sort of way.
Mhm.
Um, and to kind of play into the theme of small town elementary school where you're not like villagers and demons. You are elementary school children, and the Legion is just a group of children who have gotten too catty, too clicky, and they need to be stopped. Um, uh, it's hard to choose one. Um,
Talk it through. What are you thinking?
yeah, I am kind of in between artist and atheist because those are just things that I just labels as they are in real life that I identify strongly with. Um, I think I'll go with artist that's because I spend so much of my day doing art and yeah.
All right, sounds good. Well, before we go, is there anything you would like to plug?
On Wednesday, 7 p.m., I'm doing this stream series called A Digital Cabaret, and Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, I'm doing the Sweet Deceit a Social Deduction Show, which is an open player, Blood on the Clocktower stream series, which is a shorter stream series than most, either one big game or a couple teensies. Those are both going to be on my Twitch channel. My username basically everywhere is Dolus uh, Dulus. It is Latin for sweet deceit. And oh, good. So you can follow me on Twitch, YouTube, Blue Sky, and if you find my Blue Sky pinned comment, there is a link to a new little Discord server in there for you to put song suggestions and maybe get in on the Clocktower, and also just like, yeah, to get notifications and find community. Um, yeah, I'm starting out with the content creation thing. I hope you might check it out if you liked this interview. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll have links to those in the description for people to have easier access to.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Dee, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sam. This has been really fun.
Yeah.
I'm feeling really honored that you wanted to do this interview with me, and I it's been a long time coming, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see what kind of content you create. So,
Yay.
all right. And thank you all for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode of Hard Claim.
Bye.